Hey everybody, it's Shelley Bosh from Parent Dashboard, and we're here with another Parent Dashboard Presents events. And to me, it's very special because it's our back to school edition. So, it's that time of year. We're all kind of like thinking about back to school and clothes to buy and the things to do. And for many parents, that's a challenge enough as it is. But I remember as a special needs parent, when my child couldn't actually like go to regular school, and I started homeschooling, and that was an experience just in itself, and it can be equally as exciting and also as scary, especially if you don't have a lot of experience in developing the special learning plans or the techniques and tools that you use to modify the way that they can learn. And so when I started out, it was sort of just try and find as much help as possible, and the teachers weren't always actually, they were super helpful and giving me stuff, but as a parent I had to actually implement it with my child, which is a whole different thing because I'm not a teacher. So I wish that I'd had the expertise of the person that we are so lucky to have on today, Jen Dyck, who herself is a neurodivergent parent and teacher and has many, many years of homeschool experience, and is with me today to give you some information on thinking outside of the box when you design complex needs learning plans. So I am going to say, hi, Jen. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for being with us here today. Very excited for back to school. Are you all ready for back to school?
I am somewhat ready. I tend to fly by the seat of my pants because any plans that I make for learning or for anything for school tends to go out the window because the kids don't want to do that right now. And I think that is the very important thing to remember, because when we're doing any kind of adaptive teaching, trying to adjust to what the kids need, we have to remember that and not take it personally.
Right. And it's sort of like, this isn't cookie cutter. This is in the public school system anymore, where the curriculum is standard. Everybody has to do the same thing. You're homeschooling, you're designing around your child, which is brilliant. And also kind of like, okay, well, how do we roll with this? So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then, maybe just go ahead and launch into your presentation. I'll put you up on the big screen, and if you can just take it from here, that would be great.
Okay, let me just set this up here.
Sure. And so you've been doing this for a long time now. You said piano for 40 years and homeschool teaching and tutoring for 30?
I've been I've tutored for about 30 years. I've actually taught music for about 40 years. So
Wow.
I started very young, and every time I did any kind of teaching, I found that I had to adapt to the student needs, because if I don't, they leave.
Absolutely.
So we always, but for public school, they don't need to do that because they have a captive audience. And we also have to recognize that one of the reasons why public school doesn't always work for our children is because the training for teachers for an education degree doesn't necessarily always include teaching complex needs kids.
Right. I was surprised to learn that there isn't a how to teach kids with all any of the complex needs. They don't go from a diagnosis based barrier oriented, like what are the things that hold this child back. It's sort of a more standard approach, and they don't necessarily receive that specialized training.
Yeah, they don't have the specialized training. They barely actually have even any training in teaching itself.
So
It's all about classroom management.
and that's super important, and there, everybody who I know that's a teacher like puts their heart and soul into it, so that as in a sense is not even not a negative comment on them. It's just that when we're trying, it's sort of the reason why kids are frequently falling behind or not really kind of getting what they need, or aren't surviving well in the public system, is because of those specializations, even when you have an IEP.
Yes. So even with an IEP, I've found that even when I've mentioned to teachers, oh, my son has been diagnosed with dyslexia and dyscalculia. Dyslexia, isn't that when you read backwards? Like, not that's the more common kind of dyslexia, but it's not the only kind, and it's a very, very short answer.
So
There's
you're
so many
gonna,
things.
so they're in that box, and you're gonna help us think outside of the box for when we're
Yeah,
homeschooling,
yeah.
and really bring it home for the people who are, dealing with the things at home, that to help their kids through the issues that couldn't get that specialized help. So that's great.
So yeah, so recognizing that there are the differences, and a lot of the times all those nuances that when we search, when we look at Google, we look for resources. Oh, this is the perfect curriculum or anything. It affects everything.
Okay.
So I am just going to show you my first slide here, which is just who I am. So it just says that I am a neurodivergent parent, and with my music teaching for 40 years, tutoring for about 30 years, and my children are home learning, we differentiate between home learning and homeschooling just because when we are home learners, we are enrolled with online, we can be enrolled with an online school or some sort of attachment with an actual organized body. And the reason why we do that is because we get funding. With diagnosis, with things like autism, that the school district normally gets about over $20,000 to support our children at school. We know that this doesn't actually happen in a bricks and mortar school, but at some online learning schools with special needs departments, we get about $12,000 to use for our tutoring supports, or not tutoring supports, just for supports for our children. So things like speech therapy, just regular counseling, um, tutoring support, all these things fall into that is can be added to our IEP to support their learning needs.
Gotcha.
So this is why so many parents have opted to go move on to doing online learning. We know that public schools cannot support our kids, and even if they do have a great year and it's fantastic, there is no guarantee that the following year they will have the same EA, the same supports. In fact, what happens is as they see the supports are working, they see that as it's working, so they don't need the supports anymore.
I see. Okay.
And with that in mind, that means they are now, it's like, oh, you need crutches to walk. That's great. Oh, well, your leg is still broken, but we're taking away the crutches.
Right, right.
So
Gotcha. So what are some of the things that you've got for us here today?
So the big thing is like I wanted to talk about how I reframe our teaching, or how I reframe learning. And we always see it as like one way of teaching. So some of the classic mistakes is when we choose to teach from home, a lot of us decide to try and recreate a school classroom. We have the desk, we have the books, the paper, the all the things that it looks like a class. Some people convert rooms. The playroom now becomes a classroom, or the dining room becomes a classroom. And that's great, except your kid might not want to be there. And for in a classroom, there's always that assumption that everyone's learning at the same level. So we do that at home too. We have that expectation. We see the assigned curriculum from online schools, and we struggle to keep up with it. And that's another mistake. So when we want to spark joy in learning, we do have to adapt the lesson plans to suit the student. We frame the lessons in context that reflect your child's interests. So maybe your child is not interested in calculating trains, like approaching each other, or the speed of trains going from point A to B, but they might want to know how long it took Iron Man to go from one city to another.
Right.
And suddenly that's way more interesting because they will tell you everything about it. Or, anyone who has a child that's interested in Pokemon, I don't know about you, my eyes kind of glaze over when they tell me about it. Uh, but it's interesting. They know all the evolutions. They know all their stats. They know what they need.
Right. So those classic features of some of the special needs kids where, they may not be able to sit, they may not be able to focus, they may need to stim, they may have a hyper focus on something that they like and no focus on something that they don't, which makes it difficult in a traditional classroom. You don't necessarily want to replicate the classroom at home and then do all of those things. You want to build it around them and spark joy in the home setting.
Yes.
Awesome.
So one of the things whenever we're setting any kind of learning, then we actually have to think about the SMART goals. We want things to be specific, measurable, because schools want to see progress. They want to see that they are learning. So to demonstrate that learning, that they are learning things, you can do things. Most of the online schools will allow you just to take photos. They aren't expecting you to do pages and pages and pages of worksheets. I mean,
Right.
if I had like all these, like, different worksheets that come up, my child would be out the door.
Right. Right. And because being at home and doing homeschool doesn't mean doing nothing, but
Yeah.
they have to know what's being done and how things are being moved forward so that they can provide feedback and guidance. Because you do have teachers still.
Yeah. So that's for the online learning, but everything needs to be achievable, relevant, and we need to also consider the time. My father told me a long time ago that I thought was very wise. The mind can only absorb what the butt can. So so
Right.
that's
I'm like
why
that too.
So that's why Nixon was called Iron Butt. He could sit in the library for hours at a time in the law library and just read and read and read. But maybe we can't do that. Your child just, I talk about, like, a lot of kids have triangle butts, which, if you think about how the triangle is, it's like, they're not going to sit very still.
Right.
Okay, so when we talk about breaking the mold, it's like when we're trying to get kids to comply to our demands, it's like holding jello. You want them to move in a certain direction. So if you take that jello and you hold it in your hand and you squeeze it to get them to move or do something, you're going to end up with a big mess. And nobody's going to be happy. I don't know, I don't like squished jello. So
It is. It's hard, especially when you're parent and there's you have a way different type of relationship with your child than a professional or a worker would, right?
yeah.
That professional distance isn't so there. So sometimes it could, be challenging.
So we talk about, a lot of people talk about unschooling. When you're leaving the public school system, everyone says unschool. So then we have to ask that question, what is unschooling? Because we have to recognize that your child is recovering from trauma from school. You might not see it as trauma, but they are. They've been trying to do things in the classroom that does not work. The teacher might not be experienced in working with your child. My own son spent his first year in school, uh, pretty much the entire year he was hiding in the coat closet, and the teacher never told me this.
Oh dear. Well,
So
and I know for those, especially with those with behavioral issues like my own son, um, the handling and how they, if they're in a locked room or they're denied access to their peers or outside, that can all have sort of like emotional impacts on their self-esteem and their self-perception as well. So just even like being in school from that perspective can be traumatic for special needs kids because they have enough insight into themselves that they can see they're not doing the same things as their peers as well. So that's
yeah,
it took a good year, I think, for us at home after coming out of the public system to really just be able to relax and focus, because we made that fatal mistake of trying to set up a table and all of the things that you said there. So I could have really used that advice, not to worry about, setting up a classroom, but just using the home environment to as an incidental learning way.
Yeah, and you end up saving a lot of money too from not having to do all that.
That's a good point.
So we don't, as classroom teachers, they spend a lot of money to make their classrooms feel welcoming. But if you've been traumatized in that environment, recreating a crime scene for them, then
Right.
they really don't want to be in that room. So we have to recognize all those things that they are so self-aware. Uh, it makes me think of what's the name of the movie now? Matilda, the
Ah,
one, right? Where I'm big, you're small, I'm right, you're wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it.
right.
That's really traumatizing for a child. And often, even if it's not the teacher doing it, it could be the EA doing it, it could be the principal, vice principal, it could just be the whole system that is telling them that there is something wrong with them the entire time you're in
Yeah.
that classroom.
And it doesn't need to even be a person. It can just be the sense that somehow you're not fitting in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you're at home doing this, being a lot more relaxed and play-based and just in your environment, you can still learn.
We learn better in a safe environment. So I've been seeing a lot of posts about things like PDA, so pathological demand avoidance. Those things is, how do you not have to deal with PDA? Well, don't demand anything. That's probably, well, you're like, that's how do we learn? Well, you're not demanding anything. Let's play with this. Can we play this? What do you think? And so if it doesn't look like school and they are still learning, so I actually, you'll see there in the picture that I got there, I have like I have my kids, like what I did was I actually took D-size paper and I used painter's tape and I taped it to my coffee table.
Ah,
So, and then I would have times when I would pull out writing utensils or whatever, and we would draw. We would put things like letters, numbers, whatever. We could scribble on it. It was okay. We
right.
trace their hands. Like, trace your hand. How many fingers do you have on your? It's like, oh, I have. We have 5 fingers, and we count. We count. We count toes. We do this. It's like teaching toddlers, even teaching left and right. Every time every time I put boots on my son, right foot, right arm, left arm, and that repetition meant that he was learning the difference between his right and left, which
Right.
we have the expectation that you automatically remember it. And it doesn't always happen. I remember when I learned the difference between my right and left in kindergarten when the teacher asked, there was me spinning around in a circle thinking, because I play high notes with my right hand and I play low notes with my left hand. I
Ah,
started piano when I was 3, so that was how I remembered.
right.
Of
So,
course,
right. So using, and these are not the techniques, for example, you'd be even able to use in school. So that's why, some learners do better in these play-based, relaxed environments, but they're still learning the academic component.
yeah. And you can actually do things like the kids there, they look happy just sitting there. They're watching a video of mom. It's like, and it could be anything. We learn, one of my favorite videos or documentaries was my octopus teacher.
Right.
That was such a fascinating, and I learned something. The kids, so when you ask the kids, like, oh yeah, that was really neat, and it just became something. But it wasn't school, but at the same time, it was science.
Cool. So what else have we got here that you're going to tell us about curriculum?
Curriculum. So I said, what is the best curriculum to use? Because I see this all the time. And I always look at curriculum as a guide for learning outcomes. Whatever your goal is to learn, you can actually look at it and go, oh yeah, we need to cover English. What are they doing in English? Okay, how do I translate that into what my child will do? It's like, oh, they need to learn we need to work on the alphabet. you might actually be just taking one letter,
Right.
like the way Sesame Street does it. It's like it's okay to do that. Where do we find our resources? Online learning schools may have curriculum provided. The online, they use Moodle for eBus. And I think that with the provincial online schools, they've actually been shifting so that trying to standardize curriculum so that everyone is on the same page, because I think there were some schools that were not doing any kind of support and just passing the kids, moving the kids on to the next grade. So
Okay.
by the time you get to grade 10, 11, 12,
There's
you're,
really inconsistent.
yeah, it's very inconsistent. And the problem is when there's funding attached, there's no accountability with that money that was going to these schools. And of
Right.
course, like for a lot of these provincial online schools or the approved ones, some of them actually have prepaid subscriptions. So you may be able to ask for access to those, and those are maybe free for you. So things like science news. This one is I know it's like kind of uh, was it? So you can't really see it, but this is that lay plan. So it has things like the Canadian Reader, What in the World, has Building Bridges. Building Bridges is an Indigenous resource. Canadian Readers and What in the World is social studies and
Right.
language arts, really. Science news, the classroom ready science is awesome because it has like some questions with it. It has YouTube links and everything. And Brain Pop, I actually have students that I sometimes work with, and they have games,
Right.
so you
Where they're
can play
actually
some games.
learning while they play the game.
So the kids really enjoy the games. And then, of course, then we have other free resources like the library, and then we can always like rate the thrift stores and used bookstores. There's educational buy and sells, teacher buy and sells. Don't forget about garage sale. I think a lot of people forget about garage sale. I tend to not look at Craigslist or just because it's not usually very productive. There's online used bookstores like A Books or Alibris. There's Teachers Pay Teachers, and of course YouTube. Usually, you should pre-screen the YouTube videos so that you have an idea what's up, and then you can plan around it. But
Excellent.
if not, then you may be learning something yourself anyways.
Yeah.
Settings. So I put down a thing about settings. So when we talk about settings, kids learn best when they're most comfortable. So my child, we had a desk, table, everything for him. His desk currently is covered with Lego. There's no way he can do anything there. I don't think I've ever seen him do any work there except I think he had a couple of Zoom meetings, and after that, his Zoom meetings have been like anywhere but. So there's the floor. We as adults, we have standing desks,
Right.
right? So we know that even adults have trouble sitting down for a long period of time. They prefer standing. They prefer pacing. The couch, the bed, the bathtub. In some classrooms, I remember reading about a classroom where a parent was so excited, or not a parent, a teacher was so excited because uh, they had a reading bathtub. So they had like an old bathtub. They put like cushions and stuff in it,
Oh,
and
fun.
so when a student did particularly well in doing something, they actually got a chance to go sit in the bathtub to read. Like and of course like the deck, so yeah, this was outside, so we had a deck or our deck had an exercise mat and everything. This is back at the beginning of the pandemic, so I had to find somewhere for him to do some stuff. And of
Yeah.
course, if they need to move, then let them move. Some people do pace when they think, right? They need to bounce up and down. I find it kind of distracting myself, but at the same time, I mean, sometimes we do our best thinking when we're standing in the shower.
Or you're, that mindless, when you're cleaning, you're thinking about things, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like something that, and it's okay. It's like you introduce the idea, and then you just like, okay, go, and you relax and you go think or whatever. And while they're thinking, it's like, oh wait, I thought of something. Come back and take a note of it. And if you get them into the habit, they actually will. It's creating those habits for them so that they will um, continue to cultivate that habit.
Okay.
So I like fidgets. I have a thing about fidgets. I have this fidget. I have this fidget. It's like I actually it was actually funny. I was counting the number of fidgets I had on my desk, and I thought, wow, that's actually a lot of fidgets that I hold whenever I'm doing things. As adults, If you think that you don't need a fidget, I challenge you to put down your phone and not pick it up the entire time you're having a conversation and see if that works for you. Even like before cell phones and things, then people would, I've had sat and had conversations with my friends, and they would shred the coffee cup, or they would shred a napkin while we're talking, or they're playing with the fork or
Fiddle
the
with your keys or
yeah. So we all do it, and it's just like these fidgets need texture. They need to be boring enough so that we can still focus while we're talking, and of course easy to hold, so you're not going to have like this giant thing that you're not making pizza. So,
right.
and of course, like, sometimes like for kids, they need to be physical to learn. So we remember better when we move. Just think of it as the blood moving in our bloodstream will help oxygenate the blood, which actually will help give us more of a chance to retain things. So things like hopscotch skip counting, as you see here, I have the numbers 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. Like, so you can actually have them say the numbers while they're hopping up and down. They're playing, but at the same time, they're just learning how to count by threes. And of course, because it's chalk, you can keep changing the numbers. It doesn't matter.
Well, and especially when you have your neural wiring is different, you need to get the information in different ways. And so physicality sounds really like a lot of fun.
It's a lot more fun. I've actually done things like if like with it being hot outside, you could actually do things like assign have a group of kids, whatever, assign numbers to them, and then it's like you can only hit the ones that are wearing numbers that can be divisible by 3 or by 2 or something. And it's actually pretty funny. Like, it's like you realize like, oh no, like everyone's going to be shooting at me, so you're going to run, or or if by themselves, then you can always do, like you can try and hit a water balloon, or something, use a water balloon to hit chalk points. Anything like that just and it doesn't seem like school. It doesn't. It's all play.
Right.
I wrote down letter scramble. You can again use you can do something like writing letters, random letters on the sidewalk or on the ground, and you have to run to a letter that you have to run to a letter that is like on the ground or something.
Right.
Or you can actually just put letter cards on the floor, and yet you have to run around looking for that card, like a
Right.
scavenger hunt. Even even just it's like if you're inside and you can, okay, we're doing a scavenger hunt, you need to find something that starts with the letter O, and you're like, what?
Right.
So it becomes, they start thinking about it, and they don't actually realize that it is school. And you can sort of do things like that in a classroom, but sometimes with a lot of kids, you have a lot more chaos.
Right.
Relays, race drills. I used to do this when I was teaching classes of music history. It's like there was relatively small classes, but like I just set them up in little groups, and they would have to run up. They have to pick a pog, because it's more fun. It's when pogs were really popular, and no
Right.
one knew what to do with them after it was like no longer popular. So I had all these pogs, and I just wrote questions on them, so the kids would pull out a question. They have to answer it. Now, the challenge was that you can actually answer the question by looking at your notebook. You can look at your notes. But if your notes are messy,
Yep, that'll help them
then
want to keep it straight.
then you have the option of running back and tagging a teammate to borrow and get them to run up and help you look for the answer together. So then there's an added thing of running, but it's like there's a lot of encouragement from your peers to
Social component.
yeah, there's a social component. So you have a little bit of encouragement from your peers to actually keep your notes a little bit neater. Skipping, we do lots of skipping rhymes. I mean, like so remember, like, the Cinderella or the banana one, or like all those little skipping rhymes. Why not have a skipping rhymes for anything really? It's like anything you want to memorize. Like, okay, while you're skipping, you need to try and say all the provinces of Canada. It's like, see how fast you can say them, or things like that. It makes it little bit more fun. This
Gotcha.
may work for PDA kids or ADHD kids. The ADHD kids really, really need to move before they can actually even sit down and do, before they can do anything. So you need to incorporate that exercise. And
Gotcha.
as you see, like there's no writing utensils really needed for this. And it's like the other way you can is like you can actually play a ball, it's like, throw a ball at each other. And even with just like, with yourself and your child, you can actually like, okay, I ask you a question and you can ask me a question. And your child's question might be like, what's the evolution of the Pikachu Pokemon? Like, oh no, oh no. It's like you have to look it up. And they find it funny that you have to look up things, but it's okay to not know and just like, okay, I gotta find out, right? Memory issues come up with dyslexia, ADHD, autism, all these different things. So you do need that repetition. You need the varied activities for that same goal. And memory games like card games or Kim's game help. Card games, like think about when we play 21,
Right.
right? Suddenly you are not only are you actually just flipping cards, like, you also have to you have to add to get to 21. So
Yeah.
you can add that little component, or the memory games where we have like the different images, you have to match them up or whatever. You can actually do that with you can write down different things like write down the provinces and the capital city
Ah,
and flip them over, and then it's like, oh wait, which one, like, and you're trying to match the two together.
right.
It's challenging for I think it's challenging, but at the same time it is doable, because if it's too many, like if you're trying to do all of them at once, do two, do three,
Right.
right?
That's certainly a lot different than the traditional approach of, here's the map, fill in the blank spots on which one's which, and it becomes sort of very route, right? This is really getting it a lot more kind of in their head.
We're trying to, in terms of memory, most people, like, because we have some kids struggle with the short-term memory, with short-term memory. And one thing that I kind of realized a long time ago when it comes to memory, in order to move that short-term memory to long-term memories, like we actually have to develop the neural network, that neural connection, right? It's like
Okay.
a neural pathway. So in order to create that neural pathway, uh, it's like, so let's say like I have a memory node. Hang on, I just gotta grab new thing here. If we have a memory node where we have something like where is it now? Like this, right?
Okay.
And then we have like, we have like this memory that's right here. Most of the time is we see that first connection and it might be kind of shaky like that, right? So then if we want kids to remember better, we actually have to go over it an extra time. Maybe it's like not enough times. And the more times you connect that, the more secure that memory is going to be. And it may actually require a lot of back and forth to do it. But that expectation that they are going to get it on that first try, well, I already told you. It's like we,
Right. And
it's like,
but and so when you have these diagnoses that your neurological function is different, and so you need that repetition, but doing that repetition in a fun way is what the trick is, because otherwise you lose them. So
yeah,
these memory cards and making the games fun become really actually quite critical.
it is incredibly critical for getting them to want to participate. They can't Teachers can't really do it as much in the classroom. They do to some, to some degree, but one of the reasons why they're one of the main tools that are used in classroom settings or worksheets is because it's the easiest way to include everybody.
Mass distribute. Yeah.
Yeah, that mass distribution, but we don't have to do that. It's like when you're doing home learning, to you're in that position to tailor that education plan for your child.
Excellent.
I've also found that it's like my sister is a public school teacher, and she actually came up with for the dictate words, because she teaches French immersion. For the dictate words, she just told the kids, like, every time you have to go to the bathroom, you have to just come out to the board and write down a dictate word, and then you can go to the bathroom. So she found that the kids who actually went to the bathroom more frequently actually did much better with,
Oh, right. So
because
they're even, yeah, even when you incorporate repetition and movement in the
yeah,
school setting, it works.
like repetition and a bowel movement. I I I used to actually take all the spelling words and I would, I would take the list, I would put it onto, like I would just type it out and put it on a Word document and print out a few copies. So I would put one, I put one by the video games, I put one by the TV, put one in the washroom because, and it was funny because the adults were also looking at it. So
Awesome.
okay, this is Kim's game. It's the kids actually like this, and you can actually you can sort of imagine taking something like this and incorporating it into whatever you're trying to learn. So it could be that subject. And I said, in this case, like I just took random things and I put it on a tray. I take a minute, cover it up, and then you try and remember what's on that tray. This
Gotcha.
becomes a way to work on that memory, but it doesn't look like you're working on memory. It's just fun.
Right. Okay.
I've done it with kids and they just like, can we do another one? It's like, well, this is the only picture that I did this time. It's like, oh, you guys can actually create one. You can create one for your family and you can put whatever you want. But I've one thing I did notice is that the kids tended to remember notice the candy, the toy figures and things, and the adults might notice like, the lipstick or the school
CPAC.
supplies. And yeah, it's like, so certain things that they would notice versus what what the adults would notice is very different.
So this is a memory building
Yeah.
exercise.
So this one, I talked about, it's like dyslexia is like just remembering that learning does not mean that you have to read. It's like you should be looking for non-reading alternatives. So things
Okay.
like videos, audiobooks, games, and you separate the mechanics of reading from learning because if you're like, well, we have to read first before we can learn, we have a problem,
Right. And then
right?
the child feels increasingly
They
stupid.
feel dumb. Yeah, they don't they feel like they are a failure. And the thing to spark that joy in learning is to give them as many opportunities to have experience success,
Right. And
right?
to
And
keep up with the concepts, even if their reading is not
so
coming as quick.
one of my favorite shows when the kids were younger, I still think it's hilarious, is there's a show called Word World. And
Oh,
Word World, see how like
I love that show.
it's like, see how dog, it's like spelled with the letters DOG, right? So and that's one of the things for dyslexia. For some kids, it's not mixing up your letters. It's actually what they do is they see a word and they see this picture,
Ah,
right? So if you're seeing a picture for every word for your words, the words that don't actually have a picture are the ones you're going to struggle more with.
okay.
There's no representation for them.
I
And
got
the
you.
other thing is like, we forget, it's like, sometimes like, for when we're looking at things like dyslexia is like, there's your chair, right? But it's like you rotate it, still a chair, you still rotate, it's still a chair. Like it's all this, it doesn't really matter. And that's the thing is, why can't you get it, right? What's wrong with you? Why don't you understand? So
Okay, so the configurations of the letter themselves is a barrier, is a barrier, right? Okay.
one thing like I found it kind of interesting was that because I don't I've never been diagnosed with dyslexia. However, I did notice that I had a tendency of reversing letters even when I was younger,
Mhm.
but my I think my musical training forced my brain to actually move in one direction. And I did notice that things like dyslexia is not as prominent in, um, it doesn't seem as prominent in things like Chinese because it's a pictograph language,
Ah,
right? So in Chinese, that's fire.
okay.
So it's not going to be, it's like it doesn't really matter like, what direction I could write
Right.
sideways, still be the same. Um, and then, for me, it's like, one thing I noticed is like writing the letter J. So the for cursive writing, when I was writing, this is my letter, this is the letter J, there's my letter F, right?
Mhm.
Well, when I was learning how to write the letter J, this is my letter J.
Okay.
And my teacher had me write it over and over again because it was wrong. And I couldn't figure out for the life of me what was wrong. And she couldn't tell me what was wrong. She didn't tell me, right? She felt that I should be able to figure it out.
Right, but spatial configuration piece was, a challenge, and so
Yeah,
it didn't make sense. What, like I'm looking at that chair picture, thinking, okay, well, if that, it's still a J to you, right?
yeah. It's like why, but I don't understand why it's different, or and it's like until I finally like I just started tracing the original letter to find
The muscle memory to do
that
it. Oh, okay.
to be able to recognize it. And sometimes it does, it just requires, instead of just expecting the kids to just keep writing or guessing, then it's a little bit different. So I find that things like games help a lot. So things like we're reading things like the alphabet game. You have everyone taking turns saying a word that starts with a letter, that letter sound. And I said it's a really great card game. My husband and I played it over the phone when we were first dating because we were in different cities.
Ah.
And we actually played it when we were on our honeymoon. It was funny because like you were in a nice, we're having a romantic dinner. We're still playing this game. We're in the letter P, and suddenly I shout pedophile. So
Ah. Oh no.
whoops, maybe I shouldn't yell that. Um, but it was like, but even like just using those. I One of the tools that I like using a lot is having bananagram tiles for. I use it for like so many different things. So the bananagram tiles is because you can actually use it for things like letter identification. Oh, find all the bees. Like, can we find all the bees in that pile of letters? Can we find like or you can actually use it for spelling,
Okay.
right? Or let's say you spell cat, okay, and then you put another letter in, change the letter, and you go, what letter, what sound is that? And it's like, what if I put them together? Because we know that this is cat. What happens, right? And it's there's no writing then, and it's not really reading because like, and we'll put random letters in front just to see like, well, what if we put DAT? What's that? What's that spell? We know it's not a real word, but it's like that it's that the phonetical sound that you're trying to impart. My nephew likes typing random letters in our Zoom meetings and asks me to pronounce them, so he thinks it's hilarious because we're like
Oh, so he types a series of just key
random letters.
words.
It's not
Yeah.
actually an actual word, right? And it's like, oh, sure, why not? You can use things like Mad Libs, like for just silliness to do your parts of speech. So I found Spider-Man one. Like I have a Spider-Man one. I have like the Guardians of the Galaxy. I think I have like there's Christmas ones. And even if you don't want to spend the money on something like that, you can take a favorite book. I would probably scan it first and then just like take out all the nouns or something and
Oh.
then have them just like replace those in that particular passage, replace those words with other nouns, and then and if they're familiar with the, like say good night moon, right, you could go through the whole thing of good night moon and replace,
The nouns.
yeah, replace all the nouns. They find it really funny. It's like
Right.
good night what?
Good night,
Good
pie.
night, it's like good night knee, like what, okay.
Cool.
And then the kids who have trouble with composition, like I like story cubes.
Okay.
So story cubes is like where you're just rolling some things. And again, this is it's not as much for dyslexia, but dyslexia, all part of it is also auditory processing. It's language processing as well.
Okay.
So it does fall into that category. So it's like you can't just like, it's not just about picking up a book and reading words. So, and it becomes fun. I actually was looking online. I actually found Harry Potter story cubes.
Oh, interesting.
And I also found Batman story cubes. I got the Harry Potter ones. I haven't seen the Batman ones yet, but I'm very excited about it.
So they're like dice and you roll them and build a story from it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And you don't have to use all of the dice if you don't want to. It's like each pack comes with 9 cubes. So you can, it's just when they're stuck, I don't know what to write about.
Right.
That comes at, or let's like, let's make up something and like, what is this? Oh, that's a dice. Like, what letter does that start with? You can do that,
Gotcha.
right? So you can do all these things. We've all played probably Spot It at one point or another time. Spot It actually has a pack that's called Basic English. They also have a pack that's called Basic French, and if you find it, buy it because it's like gold. It is now out of production, so if you find it used somewhere and you think you might want to use it for later on down the road, get it now. I have been looking for it for the last, was it 3-4 years, and I'm not the only person. I've actually written to Spot It asking them, can you please do another run of this because so many people are still looking for it.
Excellent.
I said, and it would be great if they would actually do it for other languages. Can you imagine Spot It in China for Chinese
Oh, that'd be cool.
or any other language? Spot It Spanish, Italian, and then the blue orange. They actually have like something like Spot It, and again, it's similar. It's like you're just matching. There's one word in that pile of cards that will match with the picture,
Okay.
right?
Right.
And then cooperative games help take the competition away because some kids become very competitive about how to, like how we're going to, I need to win or whatever. So you take
Right.
the competition away. So the Untold one is great for, again, for older kids who have trouble with composition with coming up with stories and things. So Untold actually helps you. It's like writing an episode for a series, and you can
Okay.
do character development and everything. 5 minute Marvel is really about it's pattern recognition, and you might be it's based a little bit accounting, but I really like it. Even if you don't buy this game, you should download the app for 5 minute Marvel because they have a 5 minute timer. It's great for when the kids are in a shower and you want them to be done in 5 minutes.
Excellent.
And
Anything you want done in 5 minutes.
And we also have just one where you actually can take, you actually have like a series of different words and you play with other people. But what happens is if anyone comes up with the same word to describe, it's like taboo. But if anyone
Ah,
comes
okay.
up with the same word to describe something, then they cancel each other out.
Gotcha.
So, like for example, if you want the person to guess the word Jedi, if two people wrote Yoda, then you can't guess Yoda.
Right.
But of course, you can only use one word. But this again, it's like you have to be able to kind of read, to write a little bit, or to, and even if not, like they do find it pretty fun. Dyscalculus, like I found Spot It for I found Spot It cards for math.
Okay.
And they actually have it for addition as well. Um, Dyscalculia requires that clear step-by-step explanation, and you need things like colored pencils or anything like that. Tiles for place values, or you can write on poker chips or something. I got this particular idea from looking at the Montessori tools,
Okay.
but I wasn't will. I just don't. I couldn't afford to spend $80 on something that I wasn't sure if it's going to work.
Right.
So I found these little tiles in a teacher supply store that was less than $5. And then I just wrote on them. And ta-da, I got my place value tiles, and we could actually multiply with them. You can add with them. It actually worked out really well. And graph paper helps like keep for, the numbers, how when we do it as adults, sometimes with the writing and your numbers kind of go sideways.
Right.
So we use graph paper. Math games, like, you can play blackjack, go fish, because then you have number recognition. Zeus on the Loose is like you actually have to add up to tens, right? So
Gotcha.
if you're like and every time you get the number that gets to 10, then you get Zeus. And my son's name is Zeus, so he loved the game.
Awesome.
He wanted to be the figure to be everyone gets, right? I'm like, no, no, no. And even things like 12-sided dice, you can use they can use different sided dice to practice multiplication or adding,
Okay.
right? So you it's like those are very cheap tools. You notice that there's no curriculum in there. Then you don't actually really have to do that as much. And 12-sided, all the different sided dice, you just have to hit any kind of game store, and those dice they're pretty cheap because people use them for Dungeons and Dragons. You
Right.
don't have to play Dungeons and Dragons to actually use the dice. This the last one here is like it's like it's math blocks, and what you're expected to do is you like you would have a number dropping, and then you add the numbers to make that to destroy the
Ah,
block. This one I found in Brain Pop, and my students love this game,
excellent.
so they have fun. I found a multiplication version of this too. And of course, like, dysgraphia is also another challenge. So like I have a thing about pens. So all these different pens, like, sometimes like, a stubby a stubby mechanical pencil might give you a better grip. The Copic pens, I like them, but they're probably not the greatest for writing on homework or, work because it goes right through. Different kinds of pens, like see what works. I like drafting pencils as well because the leads are so much thicker, so they're less likely to break so easily. But
Right.
and I also just happen to have like a lot of them because my father was an engineer. So, but we need to strengthen their hand muscles though. So playing Lego, putty, connect the dots, free coloring, like free drawing, tracing, like all this stuff to do this, right? And if you want to have empathy about how difficult is it to learn how to write, to hold that pencil, to get the fine motor skills, try writing with your non-dominant hand and see how
Right,
well you fare. Because when we actually have that empathy as to what that struggle is, we actually are more willing to take that time to have that patience. It's so easy to lose patience, like just hold it like this, right? The
right.
tripod grip activities, things like beading, like, take small pony beads and thread it onto a piece of spaghetti or a piece of string. Playing pickup sticks,
Right.
right? We play pickup sticks, dropping beans into a small container, like one bean at a time, or goldfish, pick up goldfish one at a time. Small M&Ms if your child is okay with, like, having copious amounts of sugar. Uh, alternatives to writing, then you can also do speech to text. So like if they have activities that require the writing and everything, then you know what, do the speech to text, the typing, the scribing. All these accommodations are available on IEPs, but you actually have to ask for them.
Okay.
And then most importantly is separate composition from the physical act of writing, because when we just when you're expecting them to compose and write, that's two major things we have to do at the same time. It's like, I don't know, preparing food in the kitchen while washing dishes all at the same time, like, or it's like all the things, like I like doing one thing at a time, and like I'll compartmentalize, but they are separate tasks in itself.
Awesome.
So we do want to make sure that the kids like feel supported in these areas. So implementation of these things, like I like talking about SMART goals because SMART goals really do apply to everything that we do. So being specific in our expectations, being measurable. So, like how much do you want me to do? I want you to do 2 questions and then you can go. It's like 1 question. You might
Right.
actually have to, you might actually have to negotiate it. So if you know your child needs to negotiate, and it's like, and it's okay to negotiate because you're giving them negotiating skills then, right? So
Absolutely.
with that in mind, you might actually say like, "Oh, I want you to do 10 questions." Well, that's too many. Well, how many do you think you can do? And they might counter. It's like, "Oh, maybe I can just do one." It's like, "Well, no, maybe we can get you to do 8 of them." Well, maybe I can do, and they might actually keep kind of going up. We learn how to negotiate in things like Neopets or other. It's like whenever you're buying things, make it achievable, something that they can realistically feel like they can do. And every goal actually has to be tagged with success in mind.
Right.
If it's not, they will not want to do a repeat.
And something that makes them want to do it again.
Yes. And of course, then that means it has to be realistic. So you can't just like, we need to do the next 5 pages because of your sheets because we're behind and we're on the schedule. You
Right.
might actually look at the sheets and go, you know what? Even when I'm teaching, there are a lot of questions in the books that we use, and I often just say, I want you to do one of these, each of these questions because and I just want you to demonstrate that you understand how to do it. And if they can't, then we come back and we do, we have another one to do it again. And the other thing is be prepared to have to maybe either pre-scan some, if your child doesn't want to write on that mucked up notebook, on the mucked up sheet, you might actually have to just give them a printout of it.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a lot of I know that there's a lot of homework that comes up and they get frustrated and they crumple it and they're done with it. And they're like,
Right.
okay, now you have to pick it up and smooth it out and do it. It's like, no, you're not going to want to do that. I just hand them a fresh sheet. It's like, here you go, let's try this again. I know you're frustrated. Let's let's break this down and look at it. You have to give them space to and time to process, because when you have too much in a short time, it is overwhelming.
Right.
And we break things down into steps. And then, of course, you need to use that IEP as a guide. It's like it's your educational plan. Even if you don't have one that's done by a school, you can actually set up an IEP for your own child. I mean, why not? You're just making your goals. It's an
Right.
individual education plan, and it's a guide. And then you can change it as needed. Even when the
Gotcha.
schools do one, they can change it for you.
Okay.
So when I talk about breaking things down, it's like whenever you talk to kids about things, like look at how hard we're building something. Look at the Lego instructions. It may need to be visual. You need things to be step by step. My son is gradually getting better at following instructions, and it's all step by step. But the final product in Lego is so rewarding, so you don't build it for them. Sometimes like, I really want this, and then it's like, oh, I can't do it. Can you build it for me? And then like as parents, we're like, okay, sure, I'll help you, right? Because we spent so much money on it. But the better way to do this more is, oh, well, let's work together and figure out how to do it. And what you're doing is you're giving them that skill to learn how to read the instructions, how to work step by step, teaching them the patience that's required,
Right.
right? Yes, they do want that final product, but the it's like part of learning. It's like part of this has to be part of the journey.
Okay.
And we have the reluctant learners. They have anxiety, perfectionism, lack of motivation, executive function challenges. So my favorite thing to talk about is what relationships aren't the foundation of approaches that you're using to support child development and behavior regulation. You're doing it wrong. So you need to actually work as a team. And
Right.
you'll see here, like, it's like when they are overwhelmed, it's like I I found cucumber slices on the eyes, and just like you have to sit down so they don't fall off. And it actually is very relaxing. It's like, and then it's easy, if they don't like it, they can, it's easy to clean up. But afterward, they're like, oh, I have a snack too, so it works. It works really well. But you have to change tactics.
Well, I mean, some people pay a lot of money at spas for that.
Yeah, it's like they love it, right? It's like they like having their feet rubbed or something. Anxiety is like, you make them laugh, because when you stimulate that limbic system, their memory improves, their mood improves, their focus improves. You work on breathing. I talk about breathing in through the nose, out through the nose, in through the nose, out through the butt, and the kids, what? They start laughing. And I like bee buzz. And if you look at bee buzz, it's like it does help reset the brain. It's like you're just plugging your ears and you buzz as loudly as you can,
Ah,
and it does reset the brain. I know it's like I thought it was weird, but a psychiatrist told me about it.
oh, interesting.
And timers are good for those who are reluctant to begin, because then you can go like, well, we're going to sit for 5 minutes, and then we're done for now. And especially when they're easily distracted, it's like we'll focus for that 5 minutes, and then we can do what you want to be distracted with. So you're kind of resetting that. They go off topic, like let's, we have to come back to it. Perfectionist, like you work on it for 5 minutes. The anxiety, but you set that goal first.
Okay.
And the perfectionism is about, coloring outside the lines. It's model the behavior. Announce step by step that, hey, I made a mistake. Wait, let's figure out how to do it. You have to show them, demonstrate how it's okay to make mistakes and how we work through our feelings for it.
Ah, interesting.
So if we don't do that, then yes, we have that, it's like, as for a lot of teachers and a lot of parents, like we feel like we have to be perfect for our children, but we know that it's not a sustainable expectation, really. And the last one is just the balance of work and school. It's like you have to find the best time for schoolwork. It's like you do small chunks, 15 to 30 minutes, then go back, do video games, videos, games, audio books, graphic novels. You have busy days. Why not a 4-day work school week, 3-day school week, maybe 2 days maximum a day. Work, do the weekend. It's like you can still work and just give your child something like, it's like, oh, work on the connect. And why don't you play with connect the dots? Well, oh, why don't you, hop outside? Um, you can hire a mother's helper to play games together. And hiring a mother's helper then is like, it's not quite a BI because like BIs can get expensive, but sometimes there are younger kids who aren't quite old enough to babysit, but at the
Right.
same time, they tend to be responsible enough to just hang out and play, and they don't mind.
Yeah.
And reading time can easily just be bedtime reading. So all that fun stuff.
Wow.
And that was it for my slides. I know it's like,
Oh my gosh, Jen, that was such an incredible set of information from it. Like, I mean, when I think back, I mean, you went through all of the major diagnoses, ADHD and dyslexia and dysgraphia and reluctant learners and anxious and perfectionist. Like, you really hit all of the different types of kids. You hit all of the different things, like all the different tools you can use. You hit all of the different things, like, important pieces like sorting, writing, physical writing from building composition, and reading from comprehension, so that they don't get hung up together. Smart goals implementation. Oh my gosh, this was like a short course for parents. Thank you so much for
yeah, it's like trying to pay attention to the time as well. So
well, and because each of these, I'm sure you could go into at depth. How can people, like, you do this, you do consultations and online tutoring as well, right? So how can
yeah,
people get a hold of you if
um,
they need help?
I actually have I have my Facebook website, so it's J Dyck Studios,
Okay,
and
we'll put it in
it's
the chat down below for anybody who's watching on replay. Feel free to also ask questions in the comment section.
yeah, and so it just makes it a little bit easier just for every, because like in order to help people, it has to be tailored for your child. And so
Absolutely.
that's why like every time I'm doing any kind of tutoring, and I know that not all kids work well with Zoom. I've had some parents like, oh, my kid won't do Zoom and stuff, but we all remember how the Zoom classes were like at the beginning of like March 2020 or April 2020, where the teachers were not prepared to be teaching by Zoom. And so it was very dry. It was all like worksheets, or all that, the online learning, the expectation of like, you know, I have students that they don't want to be on the screen because, we don't, they don't like seeing themselves on screen. So I have some students who, when they log on and stuff, they have an avatar. So I've taught to little dogs, bunnies, raccoons. They
I
change.
know at work I've had avocados and all sorts of different, even the adults are getting into it. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and then
Okay,
say they
okay.
can change their background or whatever, and it just makes it like a little bit more fun. I change my backgrounds according to, often change my background according to the student interest, just because they want to know what's going on, and it just becomes like, a lot more fun. And of course, we learn better by doing. I don't
Right.
I don't learn very well just by listening to somebody only.
Right, right. Well, I want to wrap things up here by saying thank you so much. And folks, if you're a parent that's either just starting out, make sure you get a hold of Jen to get a consultation. If you're having, especially if you're having difficulties with maintaining, or if you're having troubles with maintaining sort of like that parent professional kind of distance, and things are getting overheated, or if you work but your child can't be in school and you need some help, and if you're in the greater Victoria region, feel free to contact ParentDashboard. We have workers who have learned a lot of this stuff, but we'll be following Jen's work and learning from her about how to implement these things. And we do homeschool as well. So contact Jen, contact us, and we'll be all happy to help you. So I wish everybody a safe and stress-free re-entry into the school year. And give us a shout if you need anything. And if you have any questions or concerns or comments that come up, just pop them in the chat, and I'm sure we'll tag Jen, and I'm sure she'll pop in to answer, and you can give her a shout, and she does these consultations. So thank
And
you so much, Jen. This has been awesome.
and thank you so much, Shelley, for inviting me to speak as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll talk again soon.
Okay, bye.
Okay.